Wow,
Welcome,
that's
Noor.
some great music.
Yes, energizing music. How are you, Noor?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I am good. I'm pumped up after yesterday's event, and I'm sure that we're gonna have another amazing day today.
Thank you.
So let's dive right in. The format of today is I'm gonna be asking you a few questions, around 18 minutes, and then we're gonna open up the session live for other people to ask you questions, plus or minus, and then we'll take a small break before we transition to the next speaker. Um,
Perfect.
So is it okay if I go ahead and start with the first one?
Go ahead.
I'm gonna lead with purpose and start with purpose. If I had a magic wand and could create a formula for finding purpose, what would yours be?
I think, purpose is something that changes, right? So if I look back, I've had many different purposes at different points in my life. Sometimes purpose is, being a mom and just being present and that's all there is, right? And that's the moment that you have to choose that that's what's important. And sometimes purpose is finding a new role or a new company or something that really drives you and motivates you. I think, when you look back, it's taking advantage of those moments where you felt a calling to do something or to be present for someone, and really leaning into that. And whether that's a journey of 10 years or 10 minutes, being mindful of purpose is as important as finding a long-term purpose.
I love that. And I talk a lot about the idea of micro purpose moments and that lead into that meta purpose. So I love that. How important is it for when founders come and pitch to global ventures? How important is it for you to identify that they're actually anchored in a really good purpose versus I'm just starting this because I want to build wealth? And I'm saying that knowing that wealth is really important. I mean, for me, it's not either profit or purpose. It's a combo of both.
Um, I think it's instrumental to success. So even if I were to put a purely financial hat on, founders that are more mission driven or purpose driven are more likely to succeed. Being a founder is incredibly hard. Being an entrepreneur takes everything from you. And if you're simply motivated by financial returns, then when the tide changes or there's a new fad or something that's might have a higher chance of success, you're just going to move and do that. And where does that leave the people that backed you? Either you're forced to stay in your current role unhappily, which means you're not going to end up achieving as much, or you leave them high and dry. So, backing mission-driven founders and purpose founders is always just better business because then they're more likely to get out of bed and do a good job the days that it's really, really hard. But it's also more meaningful to us. If we're going to put our capital to use, we should find a way to put our capital to use that also affects hundreds of millions of lives. And some founders, other founders, like you can create financial returns for our investors and create better lives for people around the world. It's not one at the expense of the other.
Totally agree. And I love what you said about how hard it is to build a business. And I know that firsthand from my own business. It's really, really hard. It's hard work and you work day and night. And sometimes you find it's working and other times you find it's not. And I think that entrepreneurs are the most purpose-driven people. They're the dreamers in this world. So but there's not enough support out there for entrepreneurs. So for example, if I'm employed in the corporate sector in many major companies assigns coaches and assigns support therapy or coaches to their employees, but that's not necessarily the same within the entrepreneurship sector. And I'm not speaking about global ventures because I know that you support your own founders, but talk to me about the whole sector overall. Like, what's the importance of supporting founders, and whose role do you think that is?
Um, I mean, part of it is their friends, their family, the people around them. When someone decides that they're going to go on this adventure and start a company, I think for every one yes you hear 10 no's. Except as a founder, your ears only hear the yeses and the no's you tend to ignore. And I think that that's just part of the journey. I think everyone around you thinks it's a bad idea until you start. And then once you start, they realize you're going to do this crazy thing anyway. So they get on board to support you. So it's friends, it's the family, it's the people around you. I think founders get very sucked into their businesses, right? And that this becomes their entire life. And I think people around them, it's their role at that point in their life journey to kind of just bring them back to having some level of balance. Um, the ecosystem is important. Angel investors are important. So overall, there's a large community, but I do think it's really easy as a founder to just sit behind your laptop or your product that you're building and just do that for 14, 16 hours a day, and not get out there. So I think that part of the responsibility does sit on the founder, right? You can't just say it's the ecosystem and community.
Mhm. Do you feel that VCs should provide more support? So, for example, in North America, a lot of VCs are de-risking their investment these days by making sure that every investment they're giving includes a level of coaching or a level of therapy to de-risk their investment and to make sure that the founder is actually well supported. Is that something that you feel should be done all over the world?
I do think it should. I think that it's on as much the VC as the founder himself or herself, right? To say, hey guys, I need an exec coach. Do you have any support for that? Whether it's financially or helping me find someone, or right. So I think that the founder also kind of needs to put up their hand. The VCs can do as a de-risking strategy, but if a VC were to go to a founder and say, hey, you need a coach, there's a possibility the founder would not be very amenable to that. So
Mm.
I think it's a very delicate balance because it can be received if people are not careful in a way that's saying, hey, we think that you're not doing as well as you could do, whether it's the mental health or the performance. So I think it's a delicate balance. I think that there's a lot less stigma about coaching and therapy in the US than there still is in the region. So whereas you have an executive coach be a huge kind of perk in some other markets, here it might be seen as kind of suggestion that you're not performing at your best.
Mm. We had Dr. Gabor Mate yesterday speaking, and I'm part of his community because I'm a certified practitioner with him. And one of the things that we say in compassionate inquiry is that when you explore therapy, you're actually doing that to go back to your own essence, to your own purpose, to your own roots. It's not because there's actually anything that's wrong or that you're not performing at your best. Actually, when you are not doing that, you are definitely not performing at your best because you're not connected to your roots and to your essence and to your true self. What do you think about that?
Um, I think life is a journey, right? And I think that there's no one point in time where you say, I'm now connected or not connected. I'm doing my therapy. I'm not doing my therapy. I reflect on my journey, and sometimes I feel very connected, and I'm not doing therapy. And sometimes I'm doing therapy, and I feel very disconnected. So clearly, sometimes I'm doing therapy, and I feel connected. And I think that we have to be kind to ourselves,
I love that.
and I
Totally.
think that I think we're a bit too harsh on ourselves.
Totally.
Um, for me, part of the question and part of the journey is always, you know, are you going to look back and regret wasting this opportunity? Are you going to look back and, feel like you wish you were more present? I just really believe in being present, starting with gratitude and being all you can be at this point in time. And it's all it's all you can be. Um, I know, for example, sometimes when I do meditate, I reach a very wonderful level of meditation. I come out, I'm like, that was great. I should do this every day. And then other times I'll sit on the mat and nothing. Right. And so ultimately it's like, great, all right, I'm getting there, but it's not an achievement. And it's just you have to be kind to yourself and accept that each day is a different day. You are a different person. You are where you are. And accepting that becomes becomes a great gift for you to be able to make the most of that day rather than try to be as good as yesterday.
I love that. And I think you were getting a lot of hearts also when you were saying you have to be kind to yourself. I totally believe in the importance of self-compassion. And I do think that you're right, that we are hard on ourselves. And I think that that's even more present for entrepreneurs. Look at all these hearts. Can you see the
Oh,
hearts?
thank you. Thanks, everyone. I love
We
all these
need hearts.
entrepreneurs and
We,
everybody else.
we all need hearts and we all need hope these days. So it's lovely to see. Yeah. You're someone, as someone who was one of the first to scale IPO and operate a public company in the MENA region. What are some of the challenges that you found that 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 stood in your way to help you achieve that on an individual and on a mental level also?
Um, I think so. So to start with, I was quite young when I had the opportunity to participate in that part of the journey in my life. And I look back and I think if I knew then what I know now, I would have probably failed miserably. So whenever people say, "What do you wish you knew then?" That I'm like very little. I kind of wish I could forget a lot of it, because I think that naivety is key to success.
Mhm.
I think that even when I started the firm Global Ventures, people would tell me, "You have no idea how hard raising a fund is. Everything you've done in the past, piece of cake compared to raising a fund." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, sure. Really, how hard can it be? Right? I'm gonna try anyway." If I had known, I may not have done it.
Mm.
If I had known what risk being a compliance officer for a company listed on the LSE and the Nasdaq Dubai meant, like I know today, if my 28-year-old self had known that, I might not have done it.
Mm.
So there are so many things in life that I look back and I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't know how hard that was,
Mm.
because it may have actually scared me into, just saying, forget it. This isn't for me, rather than naivety, which is like, well, what do I have to lose? How hard can it be? What could the risk be? So I think there's a level of knowledge and experience that's important.
Mm.
And then there's a level of naivety. And I'll say this, and I realize it's mainly women on this call, is, you know, I do get asked, what's it like? What was it like being the first woman to IPO a company from the region? What's it like being the first woman to this? I was clueless. So I was completely unaware of the gender discrimination, not because my head's in the sand, but my parents didn't have much of it at home. We're three girls, one boy. And I think they knew, because financially we were constrained when I was young. So they knew that everyone had to go make their own way of the four of us. Um, and then at the same time, when I was in college, we were about 30% women. I went to work in consulting, we were 20% women. I went to business school, we were 17% women. I went into contracting because we were like 5% women. So I was always a minority, and it never bothered me because I just grew up with it. I was so used to it. No one
Mm.
had ever pointed it out. I think that pointing things out too much sometimes makes us aware of them. I
Mm.
realized it was a big deal when in 2008, right after the IPO, they had put me on the cover of a magazine as the first Arab woman to run an IPO, and the first. And I was like, of the fact that we're the world's largest interior company, 9,500 people, 22 markets, listed on the LSE, first company from the region to list on the main board in London. What you're taking from all of that story is that I'm a woman. And that's when I was like, oh, wait, this is actually really important to people. Because even though I hadn't experienced it, many others had. And so I was like, okay, let's discuss this. So that to me is always the question, is I was naive enough to not realize that there was gender discrimination. And so I could do that. I think if I had known about how much disparity there was in the gender in the space, I may have been like, wait, I'm a woman, I can't do this. So that I'll tell you is, thinking through the history, that actually helped me more than hurt me, and that I was unaware.
Beautiful. And you're getting a lot of also again claps and love for your
Thank
comments
you,
because
everyone.
they're incredible. Do you regret you say, if I had known this back then, maybe I wouldn't have done it. Do you regret it now that you've done it? We're very happy.
No, God, no. It's so much cooler than what I have planned, right? So I'm like, I just wanted to be a consultant and or a banker or something. But I think that being open to the opportunity, open to the way that life presents itself, and just leaning in, um, is always provides a more interesting adventure.
Amazing. I'm gonna ask you two really quick questions and then transition to other people. The first question is, we're creating an advisory committee after this conference, and from all sectors, so the media, the public sector, the private sector, etc. If you had one recommendation uh, for one of these sectors to enhance mental health and purpose, especially in line with World Mental Health Awareness Day, which is happening tomorrow, what would that recommendation be and who would it be for?
As in which sector?
Yeah, choose a sector or make it general. Just one recommendation for World Mental Health Awareness Day.
I think it would be to teenagers. I
I
think
love
it would be the ed tech space and teenagers. Um, I think unfortunately today, so much of their life is on these devices,
that. Right.
and they will look back in 10 or 20 years
Mm,
regretful. They will say, I don't remember being 15 because I spent my time in front of a screen. And I think I believe the science also shows that it creates much higher levels of anxiety, depression, and all of that. And I'm the mom of 3 boys. I have 2 teenagers, 1 tween. And I'll tell you, it's as strict as I am, my kids didn't get their phones till they're 13, all of it, you still end up in a world where it's you against all their friends
right.
and you against the incredible PhDs that have been paid millions of dollars to create addiction. And then if your child is on the receiving end of that, how can you blame them? So the mental health and awareness around these devices for these kids and these schools, right? And the parents and real tactics on how to approach that, I think is key to everyone's future, theirs and ours.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful, beautiful recommendation. Thank you.
I
Yes,
hope it works. I'm like, I think we all need it, but mainly them haram.
yeah, I agree. Yesterday, we at the end of every segment, we sort of played a would you rather or just fireside type questions. Can I do that with you?
Absolutely.
All right, awesome. So just you get to choose only one, not two.
Okay.
Purpose or profit?
Purpose,
Amazing. Authenticity or attachment?
authenticity,
Meditation or movement?
meditation,
Wealth or mental health?
mental health,
Okay. Return on investment or return on innovation?
return on innovation.
Okay, amazing. And do you measure that at Global Ventures or do you measure return on investment?
We measure everything. We measure return on innovation, return on investment, and then we measure job growth or job creation by the portfolio. Our portfolio created 14,000 jobs,
Yeah,
financially included 65 million people, healthcare access to over 9 million. So we measure 5 different impact measurements alongside the financial returns.
amazing. And they say, the two most people in life you need to make proud are your 8-year-old self and your 80-year-old self. So if you could make one of these two proud today, which one would you choose and what would you say to them?
My 80-year-old self. I think my 8-year-old self was very busy skipping ropes. So yeah, I think my 80-year-old self, I think it goes back to my fundamental belief that we get given 3 gifts in life, right? One is our intellect, and we're accountable to it. And my 80-year-old self would be like, what have you done with your education, your intellect? One is our health or our youth. And my 80-year-old self would be like, how have you used that? Right. And then one is our wealth, if you're lucky enough to have some. And what did you do with that? So I'd hope that when I talk to my 80-year-old self, I'll be able to say, I used all 3 to the extent that I could, to the best of my abilities, to leave this place a better place than I found it, and not just to serve myself.
Amen. All right. I could go on forever, but I know that there are a lot of questions in the Q&A field because I see that. So if we can start bringing people from the live Q&A.
Hi, Gafran.
So look briefly, I've been in the region, been in Dubai for 12 years, been part of 7, 8 different companies. And recently I've been spending more time kind of helping founders actually. And we tend to discuss technical product questions, and it ends up being really about the team dynamics and sort of more the emotional challenges being founder. And I'm kind of wondering about what are the sort of ways to get to that core of the emotions, the challenges that they have in the team a bit faster, because we end up, discussing over many different sessions about challenges that are rooted in the team dynamics and how they feel about how they work together.
So, that there's a couple of books. I'm a big book reader. So there's a couple of books that come to mind. Like the first is a great book called Crucial Conversations. Right. If you haven't read it or they haven't read it, it's a great book for everyone to read to learn about how to create safe spaces so that you can have very difficult conversations. So I would recommend that book. The other book that I love on leadership is called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And it's another book that really sets you straight on terms of what are you trying to achieve? Is it something conscious? Where does the friction come in? Because often the friction comes in because of power dynamics, right? But if you're all aligned on mission and you all really want to get to where you want to get to, the power dynamics and the ego starts to kind of chip away or melt away. And this book specifically talks about how to do that as a leader more than anything else. So those are the two readings, the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership and Crucial Conversations, that are great for people to read and then to come back into the room with maybe a little bit of a different mindset, and more focused on building together rather than who does what and who said what.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Gokhan.
Noor, thank you so much for sharing your journey. It was very inspirational. And it really made sense for me on my commute to work to get today. What I did want to ask is, I'm sure, throughout that whole journey, you went through a whole bunch of obstacles. Some of them were worth it, some of them weren't. What is the one thing that you saw that was what you learned most from, and that you said, okay, it was worth that hurdle, it was worth jumping over? Sorry, I put you on the spot, but
no, it's fine. I think there are so many, right? I think, I'll take a minute and explain. I worked in a family business that is scaled and IPO'd as part of that journey. And I started my own company. I scaled and sold to a private equity firm. But in the meantime, I was running $1 billion company and a small company at the same time, and realizing how much harder it was to run a small company than $1 billion company. And that's when I was like, wait, how is that even fair for people that have small companies? And that was kind of why I started. But the backstory is that before we scaled the family business, it was a few months away from bankruptcy. And the first thing we did was raise a private equity round. And that fueled the growth, and everyone did very well. Without the right private capital and support, the company would have gone bust. Instead, it created $1 billion valuation, 8,000 jobs, so you stop and think about the impact of private capital on the growth of companies and entrepreneurs and journeys, and how hard it is to be a founder. So for me, the hurdles were all very difficult. But when we invest in companies and then we see the founders come back and say many years later, wow, we couldn't have done it without you, I actually know what that means because I've been on the receiving end of that. And that for me makes the whole journey worth it. When they succeed, and it's their success, but we really enabled them to achieve their dream, that just makes it all worth it.
We are so grateful for you. Thank you for your presence, and thank you for your time.